We made it. Live streams, episode 1, Freeman Live. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you all. What a day in the markets. Let me know if you think the low is in for Bitcoin. If not, how low you think it's going to go. But we're going to cover a lot in today's stream. We're going to have these streams Monday through Friday, noon this time, Central Standard Time. We're going to have a lot of guests coming up. We're going to have the best crypto content in all of YouTube, all of X, wherever you're watching. Just know I deeply appreciate it. We're going to go through a few things today. One, I just kind of want to start off with, who am I? You know, you've all seen me in YouTube videos for the last 2 years. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're new here. But who am I? You know, besides the scripted videos that you see, you know, from time to time, they're not actually scripted, but you get the point, right? They're straight and to the point. So who am I? Who is Finance Freeman? We're then going to break down the capitulation that's been happening with Bitcoin and altcoins across the board. We're then going to move into the next big meta. These AI agents are going absolutely bonkers. And with that, base has been heating up a lot. So guys, let's absolutely get into it. Before we do, who is Financial Freeman? We're going to get into it. We're going to get into it. Good morning. Good morning, Sonia. Good morning. Thank you all. Before we get into it, remember, I am not a financial advisor. None of this is financial advice, but we have a couple sponsors for the stream that allow this and make it happen. Shout out to Blofin, the official centralized exchange of Finance Freeman, and Algorand, a partner of the channel. More on that later. But I mean, come on, guys. The market is looking a little rough, and we're going to do a very, very deep dive in this. But like I said, who is the new partner of the channel, guys? It is Blofin. They're an official sponsor of the stream. It's a exchange that I personally have used for close to 2 years. They have everything from spot to futures to even tokenized stocks, commodities, all of that. And there's a campaign going on currently to the first 300 registered users. So if you're on YouTube or X, there will be a link down below. And there's also all over my X page if you don't follow me right here at Finance Freeman. There's a lot of fakes. Be careful. Do not get scammed. But who am I? Have I always been this good looking hunk? No, I'm just joking. I'm very humble, actually, guys. But who am I? You know, a lot of times whenever I'm making these videos, I don't think you actually get to know who I am, you know, unless you're in my Discord. We've got a pretty close-knit community there, which we can talk about a little bit later. But, you know, early 30s, I'm a dad, a couple kids. I got married when I was 18. Totally recommend it, because without getting married at 18, I definitely would not be here. Something about a man or even a woman having to have responsibilities very early, having to go to work, having to really, you know, have other people that are counting on you. You know, it's no longer I'm the one starving. It's the entire family that's starving. And so we waited about 5 years to have kids. I worked in the chemical industry. Just think of it as like a chemical engineer. My wife was in the medical field. And then one day I decided to pick up my old computer, and I just want to play a little bit of this for y'all. Hey guys, how this was. You know, this is the first video I ever released, and take a look at it. It's pretty funny to see that BTC 41K and Ethereum 2500. When we look at where we're at today, Ethereum's under that price and BTC is double that price. But you know, this is something that it just started out as something I loved. I loved crypto. I loved finance, and I've always loved educating people. And so I came over to YouTube, started making videos with just an old laptop that I just opened up, no microphone, no camera, and definitely no idea what I was doing. And so whenever this all started, it progressed kind of quickly. The first couple videos didn't do too well, but then they did. And then it became a business, and eventually my wife was able to quit her job. And then eventually at the end of last year, I did the same to mine. And the day that I put in the notice that I was going full-time was like this day right here, guys. Talk about nerve-wracking, right? But you always got to prepare for things in life. You can't prepare for there to be a full-on bull market all the time. You have to be able to prepare. Let's just say, hey, brother, hey, brother, hey, brother, who is Financial Freeman? Daniel Fowler. Shout out to my unc right there. But, so I prepared for that. But this has happened a lot quicker than I think anyone, anticipated. Even though we're still twice what it was on my first video, and ETH is under that. And so I want to come over here to Blofin and break the BTC chart down a little bit. If there's anything y'all want me to dive into deeper, we totally will. But I kind of want to break this down from this post that I made over on X whenever BTC was about 95.5K. Okay. And at this point, I said I thought we were going lower, right? And a lot of people, said I was wrong and all that. And this isn't to say I was right, anything like that. It's just to break down what's going on. So let's do a deep dive into BTC right here on Blofin. We got a couple things pulled up. We got the chart on the daily, and then below this we have the RSI. Sometimes with technical analysis, you don't have to overcomplicate it. Some people, you look at their chart and it looks like one of those FBI investigations that's all over the place. Sometimes that's not needed. Sometimes that's complete overkill. And the more knowledgeable you think you are on technical analysis, sometimes you get in your own head and you overcomplicate it. And so let's go over here. You can see we had this wick down over here. This was after we had the 109 top. We came down here, Liberation Day. Mr. President, I'm tired of winning. Come on, pump my bags. Went up to 126, right? And here we are. If we zoom in on this, you can see we hit this level down here, but we actually, at least over here on Blofin, we didn't actually sweep that level. I would have preferred to see a sweep, and I'll break down why that is. But just looking at history, if we go through history, right, this is going back to January 2024. If you come down here and you draw a trend line on this line, you can see very few times have we wicked below this level of RSI, right? And so most of the time, and it doesn't always mean that's what we're going to get this time, right? But most of the time you would expect some kind of little relief rally, especially when you're going all over X, all over Twitter, and everyone says that it's over. So how often is the masses right? Not very often. Most people get completely caught off guard. And so I want to break down my thesis for why I thought we were going lower, because I think it's important that we educate people. And so, my base case was around 70, but that really had to do with the fact that the 200-week moving average right here would eventually come up a little bit. If we come break down, let me find this chart. This right here is the 200-week moving average. It says 1400 up here, but we're on the daily. So 200 times 7 days, that is 1400. So if we would have stayed in this channel a little bit longer, then this average obviously would have came up. But you can see when we're looking at this right here, this is dating all the way back to 2017. I mean, this was a wick down to $1,600. That's a very, very, early trend line. And so when we're able to see something like this, and this is on logarithmic chart, so it's taken into consideration time per se. And when you take a look at this, how many times have we tested it? And remember, each candle here is 1 day. And so when we're taking a look at it, right here, all this area right here, we abided by it. Right here, we did wick below it, but quickly got over it. All right here, we abided by it, and we've avoided it right here. And so to me, it would make sense for what a lot of people like Benjamin Cohen, who they talk about the 200-week, simple moving average. Look at it. It's just right in line. This almost makes too much sense. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be a relief rally in between, and it definitely doesn't mean that it's actually going to go down to this level. But this is just what I'm using for some of my technical analysis and for my overall thesis. We all need to form as many, different indicators as possible, whether that's RSI, whether that's cost to mine Bitcoin. and put them all together to come up with your own thesis, and then you hear me talk a lot about sweeping liquidity. And it's basically the thought that there's a lot of orders under here or a lot of stop losses under here. And you can see that we have the 2017 top right here. What do? We got support on it right there, but eventually got a little pump and then eventually broke below it and swept it. And what did we sweep it to? The trend line that has been intact since $1,600. And so we bounced off of that. And so it makes a lot of sense for me for us to come down here and sweep these lows. And you can see right here, if we look at this first high right here, this was 63K. If we look at this one, this was 68. If you look at where the moving average is currently, it's about 57,000, about 58,000. So if we went a couple weeks forward, it would probably be 60K. And that's right in line with this trend line. It just makes absolutely too much sense whenever I'm looking at it. But that has not stopped a lot of things in the trenches from absolutely running. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. But my basis overall is don't overcomplicate things. Don't overcomplicate any of this. Who do we got right here? Oh, look at that. $2 tip, David Freeman. Shout out, Unc. Love you. And so, my overall thesis is don't complicate things. It's fairly simple. When we take a look at it, if RSI gets way overbought, well, where are we at? You know what I mean? Most of the time you come down. Same with gold, same with silver. Whenever I was doing those analysis for the short on that, and that's something that I talk about a lot in the Discord, guys. If anyone wants to join, there will be a link below. But, we do a lot of technical analysis over here. We have obviously Blofin tutorials, different tokens that we break down, trade alerts if you're into DGen trades, and then just general. And we've got a lot of good people in there. But, I really try to teach a lot of this whole technical analysis and not to overcomplicate things. I'll show you some examples on some lower micro caps in a little bit, how history often repeats with a lot of these projects, And so basically why this all lines up is that it's not only what's going on with the chart. The chart's one part of it, but it's also mixing together the macro of everything, because we just know Trump just announced a new Fed Reserve chair, Kevin Warsh. Okay, we obviously know Trump isn't going to put somebody in that's going to make higher rates or that's going to be tighter than Jerome Powell, right? That's not what Trump wants, and he gets to appoint him. And it's pretty ironic also that Trump was having this feud with the Federal Reserve chair, Jerome Powell, but he actually appointed him 8 years ago, and then he was reappointed by President Biden. But, Kevin Warsh is somebody that's been involved since 2006 with the Fed. And so whenever we take a look at all of this lining up together, we've got a big trend line right here. We've got the 200-week moving average, and we still have time before we get to the new Federal Reserve chair. Jerome Powell, his term ends middle of May. And so why this all lines up with macro, right? The new Federal Reserve chair is going to be there by June. Trump's pushing aggressively for rate cuts. QE and liquidity expansion returns. I want to touch on that in a little bit regarding Kevin Warsh and kind of his thesis, because it's actually not as quantitative easing or expansionary, but it's something that I'm agree with. And then we also have some big time catalyst with the Clarity Act. We already got the Genius Act recently, and now what's going through Congress and being debated, and who we have kind of representing our side is Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, representing stablecoin legislation. And so all of this should be done by middle of May, and, give a little bit of time for the liquidity to get in, right? It's not like whenever the Fed does this is the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. Okay. It's not like when the Federal Reserve increases their balance sheet, that instantly goes to risk on assets, or it instantly goes to, any other asset. It takes time to flow through the system. And so my thesis with this is that, we're going to start getting better monetary policy in around mid-May to June, and then give it a few months for that to get into the system. And that would also historically line up with how long a quote unquote bear market lasts in cryptocurrency. And so let me know down below what your price prediction is for Bitcoin, or if you think the low is in. But it definitely would make a good trade. I had an order in right here on Blofin right at this line, and it didn't execute. So people obviously front ran me and everything on that. Good to them, good game. But something like this is a good trade, the type of trade setups that I personally like to look for and what I talk about in the Discord and try to teach people. I would not want to open up, excuse me, I would not want to open up a trade like right here. If you open it up right here, it's like, what are you doing? Like you're either, hoping for this, but you're also over here hoping for not this, right? But you're kind of in an in-between range versus here. It's very easy. It's like, okay, if I open up the trade here and we invalidate it, give a little room for a liquidity sweep or something, then, never financial advice, but that's just how I go about everything. But macro wise, we had some data come out earlier, the PMI data showing that the overall economy is expanding. It beat estimates. And so that's very good. That's very good for growth. Now, that may not be so good for very, very fast rate cuts. That's where there's a lot of confusion, I believe, that we're at a time where GDP came in at like 4 point something percent recently, and Trump's also calling for huge rate cuts. And historically, that's not how the Fed has operated. That's not how fiscal policy is operated. Because whenever we look at what the Fed's job is, the Federal Reserve right here, Kevin Warsh, the Fed has a dual mandate, and it's in this order too. And it's very important to remember that it's in this order. One of them is to make sure prices are stable. And the second is to make sure jobs are there, okay? So that unemployment is relatively low. Now, why do I say it's in that order? Well, one, because it is, but two, it's because the Fed would rather have a recession than runaway inflation. If you look at some currencies around the world, like Venezuela, those runaway inflation, you don't get that back. That destroys currencies. Recessions reset countries, reset fiscal policy, reset economies. And so, I'm very interested to see how this is all going to go, over the next few months, because Kevin Warsh historically has been known as a little bit hawkish whenever it comes to quantitative easing. And I listened to him recently in an interview, and it made a ton of sense. And this is the things that I think we should all be looking at. So many people get so caught up on what's crypto doing, but they didn't even know gold had done a 3x in a year. And, they're all tied together. Fiscal policy, monetary policy, liquidity throughout the entire world is all tied together to this. And so what Kevin Warsh, the new Fed chair that Trump appointed, that will be taking place mid-May, what his overall thesis is that we should have a lower balance sheet. So that's the money printer turning off, essentially. But he believes that we should have extremely low interest rates. And I like this take, because with this type of monetary policy, it lets the free market do what the free market does. He says that we should not be waiting every month or every quarter for the FOMC meeting to see what the Fed's going to do and then the market reacting. We should let the free market do that. And whenever we have instances like we had right here with the housing crisis in 2008, that's when the Fed should jump in. Or when we had that illness a few years ago, that's when the Fed should jump in. But very few and far between. And I really like this. And the dollar is reacting as such. If we come over here and take a look at the DXY, this is basically the US dollar index. And so you could see, if we just go back to 2022, the height of that money printing. The only thing is, a lot of people were printing a lot more money than we were. But if you take a look, the dollar's down in value about 16%. So not only do we have inflation, we also have a currency that's worthless. So you need more of it to buy whatever it is you wanted to buy, right? But you can see, if we just zoom in on this a little bit, that the dollar is definitely reacting good. It dumped on the date of the announcement, and that's also when gold and everything dumped. But now, it's up 2.5%, which is pretty big. If we come over here and look at other assets, gold has been on a historic run lately. If you take a look at it, look, huge dip. Here's another easy trend line type of technical analysis you could use. Come down here, right here. Here's a high from earlier in the cycle. What did we do? Came down right here and almost tagged it, right? So that's what I just mean. Very, very simple whenever it comes to some technical analysis. Sometimes you do not have to overthink it. Same when we're looking at the RSI right here on gold. Come right here, bada bing, bada boom. How many times have we stayed this high? Not many, so just these very simple things. You don't have to be a crazy connoisseur of technical analysis or anything like that. But, the Fed's decision, I don't think we're going to get a rate cut until we get the new Federal Reserve chair in. And the first meeting that Kevin Hassett will be running currently has about 50% odds on Polymarket for a 1/4 point cut, and 50% or 50 basis point is at 10%, and 38 for no change. And so I'm very curious to watch this yellow one, the 50%. You can see it's ticked up a little bit if we just look over the last day, because if we don't get any rate cuts, and if his thesis is we should have lower rate cuts, maybe he tries to make up for some lost time. Maybe he tries to make the president happy. Maybe he tries to, do all of that because he just got the new job. Something interesting to think about. So we're just going to have to see, how it all plays out. But overall, the economy is looking very bullish. See, whenever I do pre-recorded videos, I can take a break, take a drink, and then I can edit it out. But whenever we're live, baby. But coming over here, Bank of America's bull and bear indicator registers one of the most bullish readings in history. And you can see this is going back from 2002. Let's see what else is. Holy cow. I think this is AI too. Golly, that's crazy. That's crazy. But let's see what else is going on over on X, what people are talking about. Vitalik Buterin sold 211 ETH for $500,000 USDC 20 minutes ago. Why couldn't you just let us get a pump, Vitalik? Like, seriously. The Ethereum Foundation's always dumping on people. But I do want to get into what has been happening on my favorite layer 2 built on Ethereum, which is Base Chain. We've recently had this AI meta, guys. And if y'all got into any of these, let me know. I've seen a couple comments that this retired a lot of people, and just kudos to them. The only thing is, like, if someone got in at, under 1 million, did they really hold for the 150x going up to 120? Probably not, right? Probably not. But this sparked some bullish, narrative. And so we've got this open claw, and you can see here the AI that does things, emails, calendars, home automation. And what we've really seen is they built total ecosystems. This right here is basically like a Reddit for artificial intelligence agents. If we take a look at this right here, it kind of explains it. And so you can see a social network for multis. That's what they call the AI bot right there. And all these different AI agents are talking. Guys, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But it has went to the fact that, a lot of different projects have, spun off of this. We talked about one the other day, that this one right here, shout out to Kinsey. He posted this. Freeman called Claudic in his Discord. Ended up being like 25 at the end of it. But this was another technical analysis thing, right? I seen it run up. I drew a fib on it. I always wait for the 886 level, or most of the time, I wait for the 886 level. I try not to FOMO in. Runners in the Discord, we're eating. Yeah, man, shout out to the guys. But he posted this, and this one did really good. This was Claudic. It's one that I'm still a fan of. If we come over here, I'll show it to you. I'll take a look at it. right here. So the reason I like this is that this one is prediction markets for AI. And so if we come over here, we all know poly market's huge, right? That's what we were just looking at a minute ago. But this is where AI agents are able to go through. And so just think all the data that they can aggregate. And we already know how strong Polymarket is. If Polymarket says something's going to happen, most of the time the overall consensus is right, because this is people putting their real money there, right? This is not some random guy on YouTube just talking. This is people putting real money in this, right? And so that's why I believe Polymarket's often, fairly right. That's why I want to watch this so much right here, this 50 basis point increase. You can see there's 80K volume on this, but this is all the way back to June. Whereas if we go to March, there's 48 million or 46 million in volume, right? So the odds of no change are pretty good. But what happens when we have artificial intelligence that's built on base be able to do all of this for us? And we've got a huge AI meta right now. And so this is one that this was back when we got in it in the Discord, way back here at about 196. It did this in the middle of the night when I was sleeping. It ran up to 4. That's about, what is it? Let's just draw this right there. Yeah, about 2,400%, or 1,000 into 24,000, 100 into 2,400, right? But obviously these are very risky. But this is something that is very interesting. Prediction markets for AI agents. And coming over here, like, let's just look at this. It's talking about a ceasefire. You can see how the odds have went up and down, but you could see what all these autonomous AI agents are saying. Trump administration has strong political incentive to broker a deal. Negotiations ongoing, but fundamental issues unsolved or unresolved. March 2026 is timeline. Moderate skepticism. So this is something I actually really like. But you have to be careful whenever you're coming over here looking at them, because there's a lot of LARP guys. People will make an AI program and they don't have a token tied to it, but somebody will sit there and make a meme coin and try to LARP on it. Like, this is a perfect example of it. This MultiX one, like, this absolutely skyrocketed. But if you go to the MultiX page, it even says we do not have a token, right? So this is not tied any way directly to the platform. So it's very important to always do your own research. And while we're here, I'll show you all the last one that we've been looking at in the Discord. Is this one right here. It's where AI agents can play poker and kind of, be a degenerate, which is really funny. And so this is one that I got in last night. You could see all the AI agents sitting here at the table. And this one's co-founded with this Vegas HL, the next gen crypto poker experience built on hyper EVM to revolutionize on-chain gaming. And so a lot of bullish things happening on base right now. And it's just ironic that the overall market is going down so much. Like, look at Ethereum. That's the bad thing. I make a 2x, but in USD value, it's worth less than my ETH was, a month and a half ago. But taking a look right there, ETH down 50%. We didn't even make it to this low right here. But then, the obviously next levels to look at right here, 1,300. That would be absolutely painful. I just want to remind everyone, if we have anybody that just joined, that we do have a campaign going on with the stream sponsor, Blofin. There will be a link, possible. The first 300 get to claim some, but go down there. That's the official centralized exchange of finance, Freeman. Check them out. This is the partnership announcement that we did recently. But I really love to see base chain catching on. And I just have a message to Jesse, and I have a message to all the guys over at base. Please, nobody cares about tokenized tweets. Seriously. Zora, all of that, very cool platform, but we don't have to tokenize all the content. This is the perfect time for what we have seen to go all in on AI base. We've got a ton of money in the base ecosystem. 4.21 bill total value locked. That is huge. 4.67 just in stable coins. Please, please capitalize on this. Maybe we should go see Jesse. Let's see what he's been taking a look at, because, going into all these tokenized tweets is just, it's too much. But I do like to look, he's retweeting a lot of this stuff. So hopefully we see it. Good morning base. Look at this. Virtual protocol. That's AI. Not one thing about tokenized tweets, right? Nothing. And that's what I believe base needs to lean into. I went to On-Chain Summit recently, but it's obvious. This is what the market wants. Right here, new Clanker token launches on Base are at all-time highs. Clanker's a launch platform on Base. You can see Banker right here, where you can launch, buy, check your wallet directly on X. It's really cool. You can just tag them right there. But Clanker launch, this is a new one that's launched off launch, but it's obvious, right? This is obvious that this is what people want. People do not want tokenized tweets. So we need to continue to expand this ecosystem. Okay. Farcaster's great. It's a great app and everything. But whenever we take a look at it, that's not what people are wanting. People do not want tokenized tweets. People do not want all of that. Let's check out the Discord real quick, what the guys are looking at. See, the guys just post random stuff in here. We talk. We're pretty active. I absolutely love it. I prefer to keep a small, tight community, and we talk very heavily about base chain. The guys have been absolutely excited about it. They had a whole bunch of base ETH that nobody's been using, right? Because the market's kind of been down. But so we've already went over the macro. Let me know if there's anything you guys want me to deep dive into. But the entire market is just down so much, except for Hyperliquid, at a time when we are seeing this meta really take off on base chain. And if you think your bags are down, think about Murad. Oh my gosh. Look at this, guys. I can't even fathom this amount of money. This is absolutely life-changing amounts of money that have just went down, down, down. Murad's meme coin portfolio has crashed nearly 86%. And he's now down to 58 million in the past 6 months. Oh my gosh. Poor guy. I'm surprised he's not bald yet. Oh my gosh. Look at this. 9 mil. I would just, gosh, man, 9 million. I'm good forever. I'm good forever, right? Like, I don't even need 9 million. Like, my perfect ideal number would be 5 million. 5 million. You take $1 million of it, and this is after tax. You take $1 million of it, you buy your mom a house, you buy yourself a house, you pay cash for it. Maybe you go buy you a nice little Rolex or something. You spend that getting debt free. And then just theoretically, 4 million in the stock market returning what? Even on a slow year, 5% a year. Okay. Well, that right there is what? 200K. On a good year, 10%. That's 400K. Like, come on, guys. We don't have to get greedy. People get so stuck up seeing people just, with 200 million, 300 million. Like, that's not my dream. I just want freedom, right? I just want freedom. Let's come over here and look. Let's see. Ski Bum Trading. This is a really good account that I think people should follow. He's really big in the Kaspa community, but he's very good on technical analysis. And he has a track record showing it. But he's basically saying the same thing. The 200-week moving weight, this particular, do you believe the predictive ability of moving averages? This particular moment is quite riveting, I must say. What asset is he looking at? I'm not too sure what asset he's looking at. I would not mind a bear scenario, unless this was from... Well, this is BTC, but I don't know what this is paired in. It looks like the dollar, but it just doesn't make sense. Unless this is from last cycle, something that he posted last cycle. Let's see. Was it? Yeah, see, okay, 2022. Yeah, so this was last cycle. Let's see what his comments were on that. Same mindset here, considering that we are and where we can go, you need to be prepared for it. Yeah, because there's always a possibility for something different to occur. I have skin in the game, an amount I can afford to hold no matter what happens. Yeah, I think that's smart. I think that's smart overall policy to have, cash is king in these type of scenarios. So let's take a look at what people, gosh, look at that hunk, man. I look good. Shout out to, I'm just joking. Shout out to Crypto Empress. I'll just say she did all my rebranding for me, right? I had my colors weren't matching. Nothing was matching. And she made this PFP for me. She made this banner for me. And yeah, just shout out to her. Good friend of mine. We're actually going to ETH Denver in a couple weeks. Hopefully she picks me up in a private jet, but we will hope to see you there. Let's come over here and take a look at what CT is talking about and kind of see how the overall sentiment is, because, like I said earlier, how often has everyone been right? A lot of times, people are wrong. People are wanting to wait for a little bit lower, kind of like me, right? Like I'm like, oh yeah, maybe we should go to this level. Maybe not. What if this is the bottom? What if, I personally don't think it is, but what if, you just always have to be prepared for these scenarios. Like right here, like I was talking about, I had orders set like right here. And we missed it just a little bit, right? Everyone can be wrong. That's why you don't ever take financial advice from a guy on YouTube, especially one that's not giving financial advice, right? Right. So, let's check back in on CT. And yeah, guys, I'm still learning this whole how to run the streams, how to do all that. I'm hiring some more help very soon to come kind of help us out with all of this. But yeah, shout out to Empress for helping with this and everything that's gone on. Guys, I just want to say AI is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy, because I made this with one prompt. I went to ChatGPT. I said, hey, I need a thumbnail for my live stream. And I said, use this picture zoomed in on my face. I want BTC burning. I want a live logo in the corner. And I put a picture of the Clawbot in there. And it popped this up. That's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Let's take a look at this. Short sellers are capitulating. If you don't know what short sellers are, that's basically somebody betting on the price to go down, right? So you could, if you thought the top was in for gold, you could short gold and make money as it goes down. And so this shows that short interest as a percentage of shares outstanding on the S&P 500 is down to 9%, near the lowest in 8 years. That means that people, in my opinion, don't think that there's that much downside. People are bullish for the outlook for the long term, and this is all good for risk on assets. Tomorrow I'm going to do a deep dive on why I believe crypto is struggling comparative to the rest of the market. We seen gold run up, right? But we didn't see Bitcoin, digital gold, our digital gold. We should have bought that dumb shiny rock. That's what people were into at the time. But I'm going to talk about why I believe we're going down tomorrow. But let's come over here. Let me find my list. Lists are very good to use, guys. If you don't use list, I don't know what you're doing. It really helps kind of get zoomed in on certain things, and you don't see so much fluff right here. There's some of that old island stuff that people been going on. Anything interesting going on over here? But I learned so much from X, honestly. Like, the best thing I ever did was get X. Let's look at Peter Schiff. Is he doing okay? Oh, gold boy over here. CNBC anchors tried to figure out why Bitcoin didn't move up with gold. The reason they are perplexed is that they don't understand the difference between the two. This is partially the fault of one-sided coverage, where their perspective comes solely from BTC shills. I think it's funny that Peter Schiff always says that Bitcoin is backed by nothing, but that's actually not true. Not only does Bitcoin have a fixed supply, which gold does have a fixed supply. There is so much gold in the world, but we don't know what that supply is. And, what if I dug up a ton of gold in my backyard, right? So Bitcoin's fixed at 21 million, right? And then we know Satoshi's and a lot of others are probably lost. But what he misses what Peter Schiff misses whenever he says that Bitcoin is backed by nothing, he misunderstands that Bitcoin is actually backed by the only thing that matters, energy. People mine Bitcoin. Bitcoin is proof of work. It takes computing power. It costs right now, last I looked, about $65,000 to mine a Bitcoin, or the total aggregate cost of electricity to mine a Bitcoin. So it 100% is secured by something. Same way Kaspa is proof of work. There's a lot of proof of stake chains, and I've got an interview coming up in a couple of days with my absolute favorite one and sponsor of the channel, Algorand. But we're going to talk about that. But it actually is backed by something, and he misses that. He doesn't think it. Look at it, man. He been having a rough day. Gold, golly. Peter Schiff been having a rough day. Let's go to his arch nemesis real quick. I want to show you something. I want to come over here and look at MicroStrategies guy. Let's come over here because I seen something earlier that just made me absolutely want to fall down. This is Michael Saylor 5 hours ago. 5 hours ago. Michael Saylor posted, Strategy has acquired 855 Bitcoin for $75 million at 88,000 per Bitcoin. Dude, what are you doing? If you watch all of his buys, he's like top blasting or something. This is, oh my gosh, and he does this OTC, and I'm sure it has to be cleared and approved. And Strategy, I can make a video on it, but it's a very complex kind of, I don't know, some people call it a Ponzi, but it's a lot going into it with this STRC that they get lending from and everything. But guys, he bought probably Friday, if I had to guess, 88K. Where are we at today? If we come over here, let's go right here, BTC. 74K. Okay, was the low. Even with the pump that we get, BTC is 10,000 lower. I mean, this is just crazy. He spent, what was it, 855 Bitcoin, and he's already underwater 10,000 a piece. So he's already lost, obviously it's not realized, 8.5 mil. Guys, I need a fraction of that to be set for absolutely forever. And so it's crazy when I see that. Let's look. When was BTC 87, 88? Let's take a look right there. So yeah, it had to be like the 29th. When was the 29th? Yeah, Thursday or Friday. It's just crazy, and we did break out of this bear flag that I have been mentioning, but yeah, just absolutely crazy to see that. But yeah, Mr. President, I'm tired of winning. I'm ready to start winning again, But let's check in with CT and see, this is what I was talking about earlier when I said that we were expanding. So U.S. manufacturing surges at fastest pace since 2022. U.S. manufacturing unexpectedly expanded in January at its strongest pace since 2022, fueled by a surge in new orders and production. The ISM manufacturing index jumped from 52.6 to 47.9. This actually coincides with what Raoul Paul, or whatever his name is, was saying, that we're in this extended cycle and we need to be following the business cycle. I'll try to see if I can find him talking about it, but this is what he's been talking about, is that we're in this expanded cycle, and it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Let's see what he's saying here.
Because somebody last year made me wear a banana costume. That was the peak of the market. I have more. There's bananas to feed the monkeys. I want the truth out of you. Did you buy precious metals?
Okay, that's not it. But he's a very good follow if you don't follow him over on X. Let's take a look. BTC once had an 87% drawdown that lasted over a year. All the way to the low 200s. I mean, come on. That's totally different, like rhyme or reason, right? Like you really can't compare it to that. But, I do want to show a couple things. whenever we're talking about technical analysis, and people get so, kind of caught up in these big drops that we have in the market. And it's completely normal, right? Especially when your bags are going down. But let me just show you a couple examples on things. So if we looked right here, this is that Claudic that we talked about a little bit ago. Whenever I put it in Discord, it was over here. I like the narrative. I drew my fib and it went to the 886 fib level. What does that mean? What do these numbers on this fib mean? That means that it retraced 88.6% of the pump. If we come over here and we take a look at it and we see where it recently went, if we draw this all as like one wave, look, it tagged it perfectly. If we draw it like this, look right there. And this isn't just, luck per se. I can tell you a lot of things like this molt. This is the main one that took off running. I'm telling you where I'm interested in Never Financial Advice right here, 13.3. That's where I'm interested in getting stuff. So whenever we take a look at something, like let's go break down Kaspa, see if I can find Kas right here. And come over here to futures. A lot of people are worried about it, thinking it's down. A lot of people, oh, it's never coming back, things like that. Like, look, I totally get it. And we don't have the same chart, the whole chart here. So I'll go over to TradingView and try to find it. But to see a big drop is not uncommon. It really isn't. Now, is it hard to stomach? Well, yeah, of course it's hard to stomach, right? Nobody wants to see their bags go down like that. But, even while we're here, let's come over here to the weekly on gold. How many times have we seen gold or silver do this? Like right here, look, 1900 down to 1,000. That's a 50% drop. If we look right here, and we kind of count this right here and we come up, look, it ran up 200%, but then what did it do? And this is gold, right? A huge asset, 70%, guys, look at that. In 79, it went from 900 and it ended up bottoming at like 250, right? If we come over here, look at Kaspa, something that I cover a lot on the channel and I'm extremely bullish on. This is market cap, but it really doesn't matter. In fact, I recommend looking at assets in market cap because if they have any kind of dilution or anything that shows. But, if we come up here, and this isn't logarithmic or anything, even though you would traditionally look at these assets in logarithmic, and we can switch over here and then zoom up. But, it's normal for assets to make this kind of drop, So if we come up here and we measure this like this, we come here and we measure this like this, and we come up right here, to see Kaspa drop down a little bit lower to 576 mil would not surprise me. And that's actually, in my opinion, the most bullish outcome. It's like, think of it as a spring. Think of all of these assets like a spring, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Kaspa, whether it's Molt right here, right? There's people that bought this asset down here. They came up here and then they sold it. There's also a ton of people that bought this asset anywhere in here that are capitulating on the way down. And so whenever we take a look at something like Kaspa, I'm looking at this as a spring. If we get to go down like that, it's just a lot of energy. It's a spring. That's how I like to look at it. Kas currently under $1 billion market cap. It's a very good lesson to not get caught up in the news because everyone's been sold this thing, myself included, about hodl. Hodl's the only way to do it. That people, get caught holding the bag. Is the best thing to hodl or is the best thing to trade? So let's break this down and I'll show you exactly what I mean. If we take a look at this, and we kind of just look at this all as one wave per se, you can see that where this is right here, the 786 level was at 0.04. You probably will not have the 886 fib level on your chart by default. So just come over here and put 0.886 right there. Boom. Okay. So that takes Kaspa to 2.3 cents, right? But there's a lot of other technicals that makes sense that you can look at. For instance, if you took this high right here and you came down to this low, it ended up hitting the 4 level. And I can show you this on gold really good. It works better, or it'll be cleaner over here. And so I had something that I was looking at over here. So if you were to take a fib and you come up here from this high to this low, that took you to 3,000 at a full extension. But this 2.618, you can see that's exactly where it topped out right here. And so being able to use these as targets and Fibonacci levels is something that I'm extremely bullish on. It's something that I use because it's something that is true as the test of time. Because no matter what's happening in the news, no matter how bad the fear and greed index is, human psychology is human psychology. And that is all what Fibonacci levels are based off of. In fact, I want to say shout out to my guy, Bill Cherry Hillbilly. He's absolutely amazing. And I hear my kids screaming over there, part of working from home as a daddy. But he was off today, had some doctor's appointments and stuff. But whenever we're taking a look, human psychology is human psychology. And look at the data. How many times have we been in this low of fear and greed? We're at 15 right here. Back in, November of last year, we hit 12. So we've got to be kind of close, right? And I'm not saying the bottom necessarily, but at least some type of relief rally. We've came a long ways from my first video that I showed you earlier. But overall, I think that crypto is going to change the world. Blockchain technology is going to change the world, and it's going to be led by an asset that actually doesn't move, stable coins. That's why I'm extremely, extremely heavy into Circle on the stock market, never financial advice. But stable coins, Circle, being able to move the US dollar instantly across the world is not only going to, bring in crypto adoption, but more importantly, it's going to keep the dollar as the U.S. reserve currency. But guys, this was a great first stream. I'm still getting used to everything. We're going to have clips from all of this and much more. I want to say shout out to our stream sponsors, Blofin, guys. I'll have a link down below. You can also find it over on my X with the campaign that's going on with the 1K deposit bonus split up between all the users. And you can read all the fine print on here. Also, shout out to Algorand, a very, very good partner of Finance Freeman. And also, make sure you go join the Discord. It's very important to be with like-minded people. We've got guys and gals constantly talking in here, constantly talking about new plays, and we do it all. We do long-term. We do, short-term, more, risky stuff, perpetuals, stocks. I over here talking about stock technical analysis, and same thing. 886 fib level. Look, this is Circle from the IPO price. This is the company behind USDC. Where did it hit? It hit that. We got a little bit below it today, but Circle is one that I like, as you can see right here. But if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. If you're watching on X, make sure you follow Finance Freeman. We're going to have a great show Monday through Friday, 12 Central Standard Time, guys. And we're going to start bringing up some guests. We're going to have Crypto Empress. We're going to have some people from Algorand. I'm working on getting some folks from Kaspa on here. And we're going to have a different topic every day. And my goal has always been the same. I didn't start this to make it a business. It just became a business. But it doesn't change my overall goal. My overall goal is to bring you all the best and most honest financial and crypto content in the world. I may be wrong about something, but it's not on purpose. It's not because I tried. I always do my deepest research that I can possibly do. And at the end of the day, I just want you to enjoy it, and hopefully you get something out of it. When you go to your job all day, I want you to know that when you come home, you can listen to the Finance Freeman video, and he'll keep you updated on everything, guys. Love you all.